Yes, we're going to get to Sam Bennett. Don't worry about that. Welcome to 32 Thoughts, the podcast presented by the GMC Sierra Elevation. Marek alongside Friedman and Dom Shramati, who's battling Elliott. I was battling a couple of weeks ago. Now Dom is fighting his way through.
It's the playoffs, boys. Suck it up, just like the players do.
Yeah, they may have broken bones, but we have the sniffles. That's a wash as far as I'm concerned. All right.
That's right. We are just as tough. Yes.
We're just as tough as NHL players. We have the sniffles after all. Vancouver Canucks 4, Edmonton Oilers 3. That's the final score. Getting there was certainly interesting. Vancouver now leads the series 2-1. Getting there was fascinating. A lot of goals in the first period. A little bit of a comeback by the Edmonton Oilers. A goalie pull. Skinner out. Calvin Pickard in. Final shots on goal 44-18, favoring the Edmonton Oilers. And stop us if you've heard this one before, but the Vancouver Canucks got wildly outshot and still won the game. Artur Shilov's the star again, 41 save performance. Elliot, what do you take away from this one?
The first thing I think is the last thing you mentioned, and that is Shilov's. He deserves a lot of credit. Right now, he is the difference in this series. I know there's a lot of talk about refereeing, lack of Oilers depth, Brock Besser narrowly missing a natural hat trick in the first period. There's a lot of great subplots, but the number one story of the series is Shilov's. He was marvelous again tonight, and he's why Vancouver is up 2-1. There's a few things I really look at here from Edmonton's point of view. They have to score 5-on-5. No matter what Vancouver is doing or not doing, they cannot score 5-on-5. And I just don't believe they're going to be able to win this series going, 25 out of 30 on the power play and getting nothing at even strength. That is one thing that has to change. Their top players need more support. The rest of the group is just not dangerous enough. And hey, we mentioned Shilov's. You've got to mention Skinner. He got pulled in this one, and I loved Chris Knobloch trying to get the extra time out at the end of the game. If you're not cheating, really you're not trying. That was old school. Roger Nielsen.
Yeah.
Mike Keenan.
Yes.
They all would have tried something like that. Good on Chris Knobloch for trying. But Skinner is really struggling. And look, I think he comes back and he starts game 4. But what I was thinking, Jeff, watching this game is if he falters in game 4, is your next goalie Pickard or is your next goalie Jack Campbell?
Oh my God, is that Jack Campbell's music? Is that Jack Campbell's music?
I was talking about this with someone and they said, look, Jack Campbell has been in the minors for months and Calvin Pickard has played really well. And I said, yes, that's true. Yeah. But I am here to ask questions and stir debate. And Jack Campbell was only in the minors for a certain amount of time because they couldn't fit him to call him back up.
Can you refresh my memory? I'm kind of new to hockey. Where did Artur Shilov's ply his trade for the majority of this season?
In the American Hockey League.
Okay, just checking. Okay, so that's fine.
Anyway, my point is that obviously if you're Edmonton, you want Skinner to right himself. You don't even want this to be a conversation. Yeah. But if it becomes a conversation, I'm wondering if there's any chance this could mean the return of Jack Campbell.
It's a fascinating series, and it's a wonderful series, and it's been emotional. It's been violent. By the way, I'm still scratching my head because we've seen this play countless times, and there's never a call. How did Nikita Zadorov get a penalty for dumping Evander Kane into the bench?
I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea how he I have no idea. I don't have a good answer. I didn't think he deserved a penalty. And I thought the Oiler bench minor, which Perry served, was fair because I thought Zadorov was definitely held in the bench. You know what? Every year, refereeing becomes a conversation, especially in the playoffs. I think as these games get more intense and the players go at each other even harder, I just think it's, even with two referees on the ice, Jeff, I think sometimes it's too fast. I just don't think they can see everything, and it leads to some of the confusion, if not a lot of the confusion that we get. And I didn't think that Zadorov deserved a penalty at all.
The only reason I bring it up is, and listen, you know me by now, like I just refuse to go through, chapter and verse on every single penalty and, defend yourself, defend your
There's
thesis.
good
Why'd
calls
you make
and there's
that
bad
call?
calls.
Well, that's just it, and I'm fine with it. It's hockey, like deal with it. I'm fine with it. The only problem that I have with this one is that's never a call. Like, you don't see that. Like, that's what we're like, really? He's getting called? Like, I get that there's an offset on it. All right. But still, like, how many times have you seen that? And the player skates away and it ain't no thing. It's like, well, it was a solid collision. It was a solid body check. Anyhow, I'm getting too sidetracked on this one. I just sort of scratched my head at that a little bit.
What about at the end of the game, though?
Well, here's my question about Soucy and Zadorov on Connor McDavid. Now, he did slash Soucy, but there was a cross-check from behind. This is, again, all of this is under the umbrella of this is after the game. And as we saw this season, most specifically with Morgan Rielly, plays after the whistle, or in this case, after the game, get treated differently. So the game is over. There's an altercation between Soucy and Connor McDavid. McDavid slashes Soucy. Zadorov comes in with a cross-check from behind. And as he's doing that, Soucy gets him with a cross-check up high. Ooh, that did not look good.
But
I don't know.
If you were going to punish someone here, who are you punishing? Zadorov or Soucy?
Soucy.
See, I think it might be the other way around.
You think it's Zadorov from the cross-check from behind?
Well, because I'll tell you why. If Soucy, if McDavid is not falling or buckling because of the cross-check from behind, Soucy doesn't get him in the face.
I don't know how hard I'd have to squint to see that point. I still think that it's a cross check that's up high versus a cross check that's low. I do see your point that McDavid does start to fall downwards, but still, how many times have we heard control of your stick, control of your stick?
I'm looking at it more of your body changes position, right? There's a material change. You talk about that with the hit. I mean, whatever the case is, I don't think we need to discuss this too deeply, but we both look at that and say, you can't have that. That's not good. Yeah. I don't know if that rises to supplemental discipline, but I wonder if some of these guys get fined and warned.
Well,
and if you're Vancouver, you'll take that.
The thing is, again, like I want to keep coming back to this one. It's been established that violence after the whistle or violence after the game gets treated more severely. Like if this just happened in the course of a game, like they're battling in front of the net, Zadorov with a cross-check, Soucy with a cross-check, it's like, it's bad. It's probably a penalty, but I don't know that anyone's getting suspended. This is after the game. The game's over. Isn't that one of the things that they really want to stop, finish, put out, extinguish? That's my issue with this one. It's after the game.
One thing I think Vancouver has to change here, Jeff.
Yep.
They have to stop trying to protect leads in the third period. It doesn't sound like this is by design based on the way Rick Tocchet talked after game 2, but in the third period, they are just letting the Oilers come at them over and over and over again. And I said before the series, I know a lot of people were picking Edmonton. I thought Vancouver was good enough to beat this team. Never mind what's happening in goal. There are more players playing better for Vancouver than there are for Edmonton. And that's a big difference.
That is true. Lindholm is doing himself, Elliotte, a world of good specifically. I know we made that point before.
I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you brought that up because I have a saying that no matter your narrative in the regular season, you can change the way it's written in the playoffs. The playoffs are a new start, a fresh start. Every year I say it, and once every decade it comes true. And this is that decade, and Elias Lindholm is the player. He scored twice. He had some big hits on that first shift. He ran over Edmonton a couple of times. Lindholm is definitely changing the narrative. I'll say this. There's been a lot of talk about who Vancouver's going to keep. Is it going to be Joshua? Is it going to be Zadorov? Is it going to be Ronek? I really think if they could, if Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin had a draft and they drafted regardless of money, which player could they keep in what order, I bet you right now Lindholm would be numero uno, as we say in Spanish.
Premium position as well, and that certainly helps.
Like one of the things, Jeff, in the postgame tonight, I just saw this as we're recording.
Yeah.
Leon Draisaitl's asked about Shilov's, and he says, the post is not good goaltending. And you know the first person I think of when I see that?
Who?
Tom Barrasso, the Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
Famous line. What? You want me to stop the ones that aren't going in too?
Chris
Delivered as only Tom Barrasso could deliver it. With total Barrasso snark.
Simmer mentioned on the broadcast too, Grant Fuhrer, whenever it hit the post, he'd say, yeah, it's all that I gave you. I'm waiting for someone from Vancouver to snipe back. Post is not good shooting.
Because you just did that, there's going to be 40 lines about it on social media and on 650 tomorrow or later today, I guess. I have to tell you, this series
is bringing out the best in people.
It really is.
We knew it was going to be like this. We knew it was going to be like this.
Oh, my God. Someone said to me, Tony Gallagher's doing interviews now. I said, oh, Spec. I knew Spec. That was the one mistake he made.
Hey, dragged him back.
Don't go after the OGs. Do not do that.
Vancouver leads the series 2-1. All right, to the other game. And listen, even before Florida and Boston here, game 4, and the Florida Panthers win this one 3-2. Getting there was fascinating. Even before the game, we saw a different angle of the Sam Bennett, Brad Marchand incident. One that it appears, or Sam Bennett, just to be blunt, pops Brad Marchand in the face, which we believe led to the injury and why Brad Marchand was not playing in game 4. Now, he was interviewed on TNT afterwards and denied that he tried to or that he punched Brad Marchand in the head, and that was not what he was trying to do. He's trying to brace for contact, to which I always remark, well, he's not going to go out there and admit to punching someone in the head and injuring him. So I don't know about you, Elliot. To me, that looks like a punch to the head. How did it look to you?
Don Sweeney is going to be speaking to the media on Monday. This has serious Brian Burke vibes to it.
Sedin is not Swedish for punch me and headlock me in a scrum.
One of his angry playoff media conferences. Now, Don Sweeney is not as loquacious as Berkey, so I don't expect it to be quite like that. But he's going out there with a purpose, and I am really going to be curious to see what he goes out there to say, because it's going to be two things. It's going to be all about Sam Bennett, but it's going to be about that play, and it's going to be about the disputed goal, and we'll get to both of them. First of all,
hang on. If you're Don Sweeney and you really want to send a message and you want a strong visual, come out with a checkbook. Sit down with a pen and a checkbook, ready to write the fine.
You know, you actually could do that. He could start off by saying, "Okay, I'm going to begin the I'm going to begin the media conference by writing out this check, leaving it blank. Here's my signature, and on the memo line it says NHL fine, so everybody knows.
Fill in the amount.
Fill in the amount." I like that, Jeff. That's a good idea.
Thank you. Very proud of myself.
So first of all, on the punch to the face, I know the new angle came out on or right before game 4. They knew what happened. I mean, you could see from behind. If you look at the angle of the Bennett Marchand play from behind, everybody knew what happened there. The people who work in the Department of Player Safety, they've watched hockey for a long time, or they've played hockey for a long time. They knew what occurred. They didn't need to see the new angle. You know, someone said to me, do you think that would change anything?
No.
The only time I agree with you, the answer is no, not at all. The only time I remember it changing anything was, do you remember when Chris Pronger stepped on Ryan Kessler?
Yeah, and a new angle suddenly appeared.
So the Ducks television crew didn't, I don't even know what the proper word is, erase everything from the truck. And the next game, when the next TV crew went into the truck, they found that angle there, and they submitted it to the NHL, and Pronger got suspended. That's the only case. Yes.
8 games.
And to be honest, Jeff, this is not that. It's not good, but it's not that. So I didn't expect to see anything different. I have to say the reaction to the Bennett thing, the hit, was very interesting to me on one level for the amount of players who had something to say about it. And you know this too, like, you know, Bissonnette, who's the key to that TNT show, he's a players guy. If he's going after players or Colby's going after players, it's because there's other players saying, hey, this is bad. Like, he went after Nick Cousins earlier, just like Kevin did earlier this season, because there's a lot of players who don't like the way Cousins plays. And I really got the sense through the amount of players I heard from is that a lot of players think that Bennett is one of the meanest, nastiest, most vicious players in the league when he wants to be. And so, like, they think now I did have one guy who said to me that Bennett is about to make contact with his left hand, which is the hand he broke, right? That caused him to miss action. So he did say if he had a broken hand and it could get hit by Marchand, he would do whatever it takes to protect it. So I did have one player say that to me. But there were several players who felt that, and you know what, he had to play with Matthew Nyes last year, that a lot of people were floating around social media. They just said that Bennett is a nasty player, and he's become one of the meanest players in the league, and it's why he's become so effective. So they just said, like, that is part of his repertoire. And they agreed with Jim Montgomery. They're not surprised he didn't get suspended for it. And I'm not either, for one reason. You don't see a lot of suspensions in the NHL for that play. And I know people say the Department of Player Safety is inconsistent, but I actually think they are reasonably consistent, if not extremely consistent, on what they suspend for and what they don't suspend for. And they don't suspend for that. Now, sometimes an injury kind of tips the scales one way or another, and we'll hear from Sweeney for sure. But one of the things I heard upset the Bruins about this is that the Department of Player Safety basically said, no, that's not something we suspend for that, and quickly moved on. And it wasn't like there was a long conversation about should we or should we not. It was more like we don't. And I heard the Bruins were very upset by that. They thought there should be more of a debate or a conversation about that play being suspendable. Now, that may go to all the appeals they had to face this year, and I do think that is not an insignificant factor in everything Department of Player Safety does or doesn't do. But in that particular case, they don't generally suspend for that. You can certainly have a debate on whether or not they should. And the fact they don't, it didn't surprise me they didn't act. What did surprise me a little bit, Jeff, on this particular play is how many players feel that Bennett has gained a reputation as one of the league's meanest players.
But the thing is, I think he's had that reputation even going back to Calgary. Right? I mean, and, you know, we think of like some of the battles that Bennett has had his entire career. Like, do you remember every time he would play Evander Kane? Like how nasty those two were to each other? This reputation, like this isn't something new. Like Sam Bennett has been a nasty, and I say this as a compliment, he's been a nasty bit of business for a long time. He's been someone that's just like flat out miserable to play against. Like, can you imagine playing a 7-game series against that guy? No thanks. So I don't know that this is anything new. I think there might be more of a spotlight because of what the Panthers did last year and how good the Panthers are again this season.
If nobody's watching or nobody's seeing you win in the playoffs, you don't get that as much. I completely agree with you there.
But this is big.
I want to say
he's
this
that
too.
guy.
I want to say this too. There's a lot of players who would have ducked, and Sam Bennett did not duck.
Yep.
He went out and he did that interview, and he talked about how much he loved getting booed. And this is a league where at this time of year, players duck for a lot less than this, and Bennett deserves credit for that. Now the disputed goal, I don't think that should have counted. I don't think that goal should have counted at all. I'm looking for reasons why it could have counted, and I'll give you a couple of what I think, but I don't think it should have counted.
I've got a theory on this one too.
Okay. First of all, the reason I don't think it should have counted, Jeff, is that it says in the rule book, if you push someone into the goalie, it's no goal.
Yeah, that's black and white.
And he clearly pushes Coyle into the goalie.
Yep.
The NFL and football fans can tell me if they still have this rule. I can't remember. They used to have a rule that there was no pass interference if a ball was uncatchable. Like, for example, let's just say a receiver was trying to catch a ball and he gets interfered with, but they say the quarterback's throw was so far away or too high, there was no way he could catch it. Yeah. And John Madden used to hate that rule. He would say, "Who are you to say that pass is uncatchable?" He got interfered with. He had no. So when they say that he couldn't make the save, they're probably right, but it still doesn't mean that the player should be knocked into him. So I don't like the logic behind that ruling. The second thing I'd like to say about this is that somebody called me and they made a really good point. They said, I listened to you and Jeff on your stupid little podcast last week, and you guys
talked to Berkey, did you?
Yeah, no, this actually wasn't Berkey, although it sounds like Berkey. He said, I listened to the two of you guys on your stupid little podcast last week, and you guys said that they're trying to establish it as black and white, that if you go into the blue paint yourself, the goals aren't going to count. And he said, look, I can live with that rationale as long as it's black and white, and they're trying to make it that way. And then he says, so why should there be a judgment call on this play? It's either black and white, as much as you can make it to be, or a judgment call. You can't have one and then have the other. And I actually agree with that thinking too. Now, here's my two reasons I think they counted it.
Okay.
Number one, I guarantee you, I would bet your mortgage on the Merrick palatial estate for the rest of this year.
My money makes noise in my pocket. It's not that long, quiet stuff you have in yours.
That they thought Coyle went down too easy.
Okay.
That he could have battled harder, or he should have battled harder, or shouldn't have been knocked down by that. That's
amazing
thought number one.
It is amazing how much gravity is stronger in blue paint on ice. I've always remarked on that. It's really
okay. So you're not disagreeing with me. Secondly,
I hate making that call because I'm not. I hate accusing players of that because I'm not them. I always have found it interesting how gravity is stronger in blue paint on ice, though.
Okay, that's theory number one.
All right.
Theory number two is this is John Cooper's fault.
John Cooper's fault?
Yes.
Okay.
Because what happened when Tampa got knocked out of the playoffs? They had those two disputed goals in Game 5.
Yeah.
And he came out and he said there has to be more battling around the net and goalies have to battle more. You know what? I'll let John Cooper off the hook a little bit here because it's also Kelly Rudy's fault because he said the same thing.
Yeah, he likes goalies battling too.
So instead of Cooper getting 100% of the blame, I'll give him 50. Yeah, 50 with Kelly. And so I do wonder if some of that is, okay, you know what? That's what everyone's saying. All right. Swayman should have battled harder.
Okay,
Whatever the case is, I disagree with the call. I think that should have been no goal.
Okay, I have a theory and a problem.
Okay.
A theory and an issue all around this one. So my theory on this one is, and you've already winked at this, and that is, the feeling is they want to keep goals on the board. They don't want to call goals down. And they looked at this and said, and I believe it's Rule 69 they referred to earlier, about if you're pushed into the goalie, that's it. No goal. It's not going to count. I think they looked at it. Again, my theory. They looked at it and said, there's no way Swayman was going to make that save anyway. Why are we taking a goal down because of it? Let's just leave it the way it is. It's not a severe cross-check, to your original point. It's more of a push than a cross-check. Swayman's not going to make that save anyway. We're not in the business of taking goals down. We want more offense in this league. It's going to stand. Now, that's my theory. And if my theory is right, I have a real problem with one thing. You've heard me grouse about this before, and I'm going to do it again, damn it. And it's around this one. I understand the idea of wanting to leave goals on the board. I get it. I understand that if it's, you know, the cross check was probably going to be of no consequence for that play. So they said, you know what, we're going to leave it as a goal because Swayman wasn't going to make that save. I understand that. I get that. Philosophically, I understand it. My problem is that is the complete opposite of how they treat offsides. They will call goals down based on a pixel when it comes to offsides. It is not a game of inches, it is a game of pixels. When it comes to no problem calling goals down on offsides, pixel by pixel by pixel, wasting people's time on the ice. How long is this review going to take? How long is this challenge going to take? No problem taking goals down for an offside challenge. But for this one, no problem. And I just want to say, like you've heard me this before. For offsides, close enough is good enough. Because that's, again, the original, like, go back in the history of the league. The lines are there to keep players honest, to keep them close enough. And what we've turned it into is, in my opinion, ridiculous. I really don't have any problem with the idea of Swayman's not going to make that save, so the cross-check is irrelevant. We're not going to take the goal down. But at least be consistent, because they're not with offsides. There's no problem taking goals down if it's a millimeter off, or if you're a tiny, tiny centimeter offside. Again, you've heard me grouse about it before, but the minute this happened, the minute this call was made, I thought, okay, if my theory is correct, this is completely 100% opposite of how they treat offsides and taking goals down. What do you think?
Like I've heard you say this before, and I'm not going to argue with you. I think you deserve your chance to have your say.
I just think philosophically, it's so different. Anyhow, this game itself, fascinating game. So David Pastrnak on the power play, 1-0. Brandon Carlo, 2-0. We should mention Charlie McAvoy rocks Sam Reinhart. And you're thinking to yourself, wow, is Boston really going to do this? And then Anton Lundell squeaks one under the blocker of Jeremy Swayman. Then Sam Bennett ties it up. We've already talked about that. The one that's going to give Jim Montgomery fits, though, I think, is how the Boston Bruins let Alexander Barkov skate down Main Street and score that goal. That's the one. You can bark all you want about Sam Bennett and should it count, shouldn't it count. How you let Barkov skate right down the middle of the ice in your zone like that. That's the one that's going to give Montgomery fits, no?
I would agree with that. Look, Jeff, Florida's just the better team. Those 2 games in Boston, they have owned the territory. Game 3, Boston had, 8 shots after the second period? And what were the shots in Game 4, like 42-18 or something? Florida's the better team. They just are. And, you know, they deserve credit for that. With all the other craziness we're talking about, the Panthers have just been dominant. And you know this, they're going to lean into all this bad guy Panther stuff.
Oh, yeah.
When everybody was ripping Nick Cousins, they were defending him.
Yep.
What did Montour do? He wore that shirt. I thought that was a great teammate thing to do. For Montour to wear that pro Nick Cousins shirt, stand up for, regardless of what you think about Cousins, for the players to do that. I thought it says Anthony Stewart's line. What does my dad say? Are you a team or are you a club? That's a team, and they'll lean into this Bennett stuff too.
Bobrovsky 16 saves, Swayman 39 saves. The Florida Panthers lead this series 3-1. Okay, Elliotte, off the Stanley Cup page here for a second. News around the NHL, and I think we're all wondering about coaching and, the latest situation involving either the Toronto Maple Leafs or their now ex-head coach Sheldon Keefe, and we wonder about people like Craig Berube. What is the latest?
So Craig Berube was in Toronto on Saturday, from what I understand. He interviewed with the Maple Leafs on Saturday. Thanks to internet sleuths in Los Angeles, we know that Todd McClellan was flying. I'm betting it was 36E, no reclining seat, middle.
Oh my!
From LAX to Toronto, so we all assume he's interviewing Monday. We'll see if this goes any deeper. Who else might get a call here? One guy I wondered about was Gerard Gallant, just because he seems like a tree-living kind of guy, but that's just me talking. We'll just see how deep this goes.
There was a time I thought that Berube was going to have an offer to coach the Devils. I'm not as certain about that now. Still may happen, but I'm not as certain. As I've said, the Devils, I believe, were serious about Berube. They were serious about Woodcroft. I am under the impression that Todd McClellan was going to get another interview with them. But I had some people saying to me this weekend that they think that Sheldon Keefe is a big factor in this job, and that Keefe has a legit chance at this if he wants it. I do believe there have been a few teams, more than one, that have reached out to either ask the Leafs for permission to talk to him or gauge his interest. He is a legit person of interest in this year's coaching searches. So we'll see how this all goes. Winnipeg, I wouldn't be surprised if they wanted to talk to Keefe. Kevin Cheveldayoff and Todd McClellan have a long history. I'm not sure, though, that that's going to be where they go. There's a lot of intrigue here. And when it comes to LA, I still think Hiller has a shot at that job, which he took over last year on an interim basis. I'm not ready yet to proclaim that they're going in any different direction as of yet. I think they are going through their process with Hiller. So we'll see how this all plays out, but I do think Keefe is on New Jersey's radar for sure. What did you think of the media conference on Friday in Toronto? We decided, by the way, everyone, it was too boring to do a second pod. So we just came back with this one. What was your opinion, Jeff?
It was, to me, a lot of it was as expected. And the main thing that I took away from it was there will be changes. And unless your name is Austin Matthews and most likely William Nylander, maybe don't invest in any property in Toronto anytime soon. That was my main takeaway. That everything that, because there was a whole lot, there was a lot of talk about, this is the end of talking about process. Done with process, and everything's going to work itself out. The process is going to lead the Maple Leafs to this promised land. Shanahan, Tree Living, Keith Pelly wanted to make sure that was the end of that type of conversation in Toronto. What I took away from it is get ready for change. Get ready for change.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. There was some appetite, but not full appetite to do it a year ago. Now I think there's full appetite to do it now.
Was Dubas ready to do that?
I think so.
You think?
I think he, unfortunately, when it came to Dubas, the comments he made at his press conference about the toll on his family and if he wanted to keep the job, it sent the whole thing in a different direction. At that point in time, it wasn't about plan anymore. It was about, did Shanahan and the Maple Leafs ownership believe that Dubas was all in or the right guy for the job anymore? So yes, I do believe that Dubas was prepared to do it, but in the eyes of the people above him on the organizational food chart, that became less of an issue than, is he all in, or is he burnt out, or do we need to go in a different direction? So, people can look back and say Dubas was willing to do this a year ago, which he was, but like I said, the conversation at the ownership level became more about, okay, is he burnt out to the point where we have to go in a different way? And they decided yes. And, that's where that broke up last year. I think some other things, that media conference to me showed that Keith Pelly is now very much in charge. He is the skipper of the good ship MLSE. Initially, that media conference was supposed to be held on Thursday. I wanted to check it before I said anything. Always good to do that. But Pelly was out of town on Thursday. And while they could have changed his schedule, they just decided to wait for one more day because he wanted to be there. He wanted to show support to Shanahan and Tree Living. And that was important to him, which is why the media conference was moved for a day. You heard him defend Shanahan in no uncertain terms. He said he's a champion. That's the phrase he used. And he backed him. But Pelly wanted to make sure that everybody knew that that's how he felt. And to me, it showed everybody that this is a president who's in charge. Michael Freesdal and Cynthia Devine, who were his two predecessors, they weren't interested in that. They were interested in doing their jobs quietly and behind the scenes. That's not going to be the case here. Shanahan, I thought, looked a little bit nervous. He's been through a lot in his career. He's battled to win cups. He's been the director of player safety, which is not always a fun job. As a matter of fact, Jeff, it might be the most unfun job in the National Hockey League. So he knows what it's like to be thrown around in the pressure cooker. This is his time here in Toronto, and I thought he looked a little bit nervous. But right now, he got the backing of the most important vote, which is Pelly. And I do think things are going to be a little bit different. I think right now, they are going to let everybody take a little bit of a break and decompress. I think if you're Tavares or Tavares representatives, you have to recognize the possibility that they may come to you. If you're Marner or Marner's representatives, you have to recognize the possibility that by simply saying that they're not going to do certain things contract-wise, whether it's the number or the structure or whatever you want to make it, that you're gonna have to consider going elsewhere. They're considering it too. I think right now we're sort of in the unwinding phase, and I would expect in the next week or two some of these conversations are going to begin. And the one thing I definitely think is true is that there are teams out there who are going to start asking Toronto, okay, if Marner is available, what are we looking at here? And, as I've said before, going back to last summer with Nylander, teams know that Toronto is looking for the best defenseman that they can possibly get. So who's out there via trade, and what are some of these teams willing to do? And I think that's what the next month before the draft is going to be all about.
Elliotte, anything else before we move on?
Yeah, one other thing just to keep an eye on this week. There's a Russian forward named Maxim Siplikov. He is an unrestricted free agent. He had 31 goals this year for Moscow Spartak. And during the season, there were a bunch of teams that went to go see him and did some Zoom calls with him. Toronto was one of them, and I think there's a few teams looking at him. It looks like he is getting closer to picking a team. and he could pick one this week. So I know there were some fans this year who heard about him and started watching him a little bit.
Jeff, one other team in Canada that met with Siplikov was Montreal. So we'll see if one of those two Canadian clubs actually lands him. I believe that Toronto still had interest at least, or he goes somewhere else, but we should get clarity this week.
Gotcha. Okay, Elliotte, a couple of notes on Utah. They have the 6th overall pick at the upcoming NHL draft, and it sounds like they're looking to populate the front office. What do you hear? What do you know about Chris Armstrong and Ray Whitney?
So Chris Armstrong was seen with Bill Armstrong. They are not related. Some people are wondering if they are related. They are. There's a lot of Armstrongs out there, folks. They are not related, but he was seen in Vancouver for one of the games between the Canucks and the Oilers, and I believe that is not the last time that he will be seen or they will be seen in this series.
Any truth to the rumor that they're hiring Colby Armstrong as well? Can you confirm, deny that one, Elliot?
You know what? It's funny you were going to do that. You said that because I was going to go with Stretch Armstrong as the official team mascot. Remember Stretch Armstrong?
Of course. Come on. We're the same vintage, man. I remember those things were great.
Absolutely. So it is believed at some point that Chris Armstrong will be joining Utah's organization. He was kind of like, he's an agent, for those of you who aren't familiar with him. He has represented a bunch of golfers, and he also represented and he also negotiated Kyle Dubas's record-breaking employment contract in Pittsburgh. He's kind of like Ryan Smith's consigliere, the Robert Duvall.
Oh, very good Godfather.
The Corleone family.
Nice.
Now, I don't know exactly how this is all going to work. And one thing somebody warned me, like he works at Wasserman, which is a major agency across lots of different sports and entertainment. Whenever you leave companies like that, it's complicated. So these things take time, and I don't know exactly when we're going to get clarity. But obviously there wouldn't be any surprise if he does join the as yet unnamed team. The thing about this that is most fascinating, though, Jeff, is that at the Board of Governors meetings, Toronto and Utah would sit right next to each other.
Aha.
Because they sit in alphabetical order. So maybe the Toronto and Utah guys could talk about, Kyle Dubas together.
Sure. And listen, one of the other names that's out there now, I don't know how far down the road or where they're at, but there seems to be a lot around Ray Whitney and Utah as well.
Another guy who knows Ryan Smith well. Whitney works in the Department of Player Safety. He's interviewed for GM jobs before. He did in San Jose. Like, obviously, I don't think he's going there as the GM. Bill Armstrong is staying there. They've already done that. But they have talked about bolstering their front office. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But that's definitely been a name that's been out there.
Before we wrap up the segment here, Elliot, I want to mention the passing of Ron Ellis. And anyone who either knew Ron Ellis or had any type of encounter with Ron Ellis pretty much says the same thing. What a nice man. Ron Ellis played over 1,000 games in the NHL, all of them with the Toronto Maple Leafs. He played on the 1972 Summit Series team on a very famous line, obviously with Paul Henderson and Bobby Clarke. It was his job to shadow the great Valeri Harlamov in that series as well. That is a mighty big ask of anybody, considering how great Harlamov was as a player. Later, after retirement, he took a job at the Hockey Hall of Fame. And I can recall, Elliot, during the 04-05 lockouts, because essentially I was, kind of bored and looking still to do hockey things and have hockey conversations. And I had so many lovely conversations with Ron Ellis. And we spent a lot of time talking about 1972. And I'll never forget something that he told me about that series. He said, it's a good thing that the Soviets didn't play a North American style, or else we were dead. And I said, what do you mean? He said, we didn't take it very seriously. We thought we were going to destroy them. It was going to be over. We were going to win all 8 games. It was going to be easy for us. And so none of us were really in shape or prepared for what the Soviets were about to bring. And he said something to me, Elliotte, that has always stuck with me. He said, what worked in our favor was their system. And I said, what do you mean, Ron? And he said, they would attack our blue line, and if they didn't have a play, they would regroup. They always wanted to hang on to the puck, and if it wasn't a play there, they would circle back, circle back, circle back. And we would come off the ice at the end of every period thanking our stars that they didn't decide to dump the puck. He said, because if they made us skate, we were sunk. We kept saying to ourselves, it's a good thing they're playing their style and not ours. Because if they chose to play a North American dump and chase style, we were dead. What a wonderful man. Really talented hockey player. I encourage everybody to read the book Over the Boards, which is Ron Ellis's story, co-written by the great Kevin Shea, who's one of the great hockey writers of our time. He talks about his career. He talks about his battles with depression. He talks a lot about his faith and his family. Ron Ellis passed away on the weekend at the age of 79, and hockey really lost a wonderful, wonderful person, Elliotte.
That's a great tribute, Jeff, and I'm going to leave it at that.
Listen to the 32 Thoughts podcast ad-free on Amazon Music, included with Prime. Welcome back to the podcast. Time now for the Montana's Thought Line. Montana's Barbecue and Bar, Canada's home for barbecue.
Try the ribs. Try the ribs. You got to try the ribs.
And I will let you know, Elliotte, I had a prominent Canadian actor text me over the weekend saying that is that song has burrowed deep inside his head and he can't get it out. So thank you to Rick Turner for that one. As always, 32 Thoughts at sportsnet.ca, 1-833-311-3232. The ways to get in. Elliotte, I want to start with a couple of...
Wait.
Yeah.
We cannot let this slide. Who is this prominent Canadian actor?
I don't want to say who. Let's just say his name rhymes with Jared Keeso.
Oh, I was going to guess Roy Dupuis.
Jared Keeso. I go back with Jared. Like, he's like so supremely talented, like great actor, great writer, all of it. And he just wanted to let everyone know.
How do you know
that one's?
And more importantly, why does he admit knowing you?
That's a very, very good question. I got to know him a little bit initially when he was doing the Don Cherry biopic. Back when I was at CBC, and they're putting that together, and then we were introduced by a mutual friend, and then we've just always sort of kept in touch. And we've shared at various times a mutual admiration for hockey fights, as we've exchanged various collections of scraps over the years. He's just a wonderful guy, super talented and charming, and he's a family man. He's got a young boy that he's raising as a good old hockey fan, Calgary Flames fan, as a matter of fact, for those of you that are curious. A real cool dude. I got all the time in the world for Keeso, and he just wanted to shoot me a quick text and say, man, that Montana's theme, that one lives in my ear. Anyway, Jared Keeso, the great Jared Keeso.
Aside from his work, the only kind of thing I know about Jared Keeso is that I know he's a Canada Day baby. Other than that, I don't know him that well.
Is he really?
Yes, July 1st birthday. I remember learning that one July 1st.
I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So he's a legit Canadian then.
Yes.
Elliotte.
Loves hockey.
Right.
Letterkenny. Canada Day
Shorzy.
baby.
Yep.
Might as well be on the flag.
Put him on the currency already, everybody. Just put him on the currency, the great Jared Keeso. Okay, Elliotte, we'll start with a voicemail. This comes to us from Jay Cooper in Toronto.
So after the Sheldon Keefe firing, I'm just curious, how quickly can a team start to look at other coaches who are going to free agency? My mind instantly jumps to Rob Brendamore, who, let's say the Carolina Hurricanes are to be eliminated next week. How quickly can the Toronto Maple Leafs go after Rob as a free agent? Is there a certain date they have to wait for? Just curious how quickly they can go after him, if they would go after him. Thanks, guys.
Okay, good question. It's pretty simple. Teams can call right away. Sometimes they'll give you a day or something like that to get over your initial emotions, but you can call right away. And in the NHL, the calendar year is July 1st to June 30th. So if you're on a contract that's expiring, you technically are still under contract until June 30th. Someone like Sheldon Keefe, who has an extension, is under contract for 2 more years. So you have to call and ask for official permission to speak to them. It's almost always accepted in these particular cases, and you can set up interviews with them immediately. That's how it works. As long as someone's under contract, you need official permission to speak to them and negotiate with them.
And one quick follow-up to that for those that aren't aware of how this works. What happens, Elliotte, with the money? You have someone who's under contract, say, for another 1, maybe 2 seasons. Another team hires that coach in question. How does the money measure off?
That's a good question too, Jeff. You should be a Thoughtline caller or a Thoughtline emailer.
Jeff in Stouffville, first time, long time.
Most of these contracts, I can't imagine any wouldn't, but you just never assume, have what's called offset language. So say Sheldon Keefe, for example, was making $2.5 million in the next 2 years. What would happen is, if another team hired him to a contract that was less than that, then the other team would pay whichever chunk they paid, and Toronto would pay the rest. If Keefe signs a contract for more than that, then Toronto is off the hook. The other thing that happens here is you can't just say, okay, we're the New Jersey Devils and we're going to pay Sheldon Keefe $1, and Toronto is going to pay Sheldon Keefe $2.499999 million. The NHL can rule on this. You're supposed to sign coaches to market value, and you could argue it might be less than 2.5. Sheldon Keefe might say no, but in theory, you could argue less than 2.5. And let's say you made it 2, the Leafs would have to pay the other $500,000. That's how it works.
Excellent. Jay Cooper from Toronto, thanks so much for the original question there. Rashid from Chicago. Huge fan of the podcast. Love that it's playoff season, not just because of the intense hockey, but I get an extra Wednesday 32 thoughts. Woo, not a problem. My question is, what kind of questions... Oh, this is interesting, Elliotte. My question is, what kinds of questions get asked in the hiring interviews for NHL coaches and general managers? I imagine it's more than just the common quote, so tell me your strengths and weaknesses, or tell me a time that you dealt with adversity that we see in the business world. Also, who attends these meetings? Love the pod. Keep up the great work. Rashid in Chicago.
Also, Rashid, good question. I would say first, usually there's like a first round and a second round. So your first round can be in person, or it can be a phone call, or it can be by Zoom. It all depends on logistics. For example, if a manager is overseas at the under 18 tournament or the World Championships, maybe they can't meet a person face to face, but they do it by Zoom. Obviously, the preference is to meet in person as much as you can. I know of one case where this year where a manager called someone and they spoke for about 15-20 minutes just for the manager to find out if the coach would be interested in the job. So sometimes that occurs. Now, a second interview would usually be much more in depth. You'd come, maybe your significant other would attend too, or your family, so they can look around the city while you're being interviewed. Usually you'll meet the owner or any other important person in the organization who would want to meet you before you are hired. there are cases where someone is such an overwhelming candidate, or there's so many people who want to hire them that you might compartmentalize it into one big interview. Like, I think that could be happening, for example, in Toronto, because they started their process late, and some of these individuals have been interviewed elsewhere and other candidates elsewhere. It's usually a two-step process. Both can be in person. The owners will eventually be involved at some point if they want to be. And the thing that has changed a lot is they're much more in depth than they used to be. There's a lot. It's not unusual for there to be lengthy video sessions. What do you see here? What do you see from our team here? How would you do this? That kind of thing. Feelings on players. The other things too that really happens is if you're thinking of changing your coach, or you have changed your coach, and in your exit interviews with the players, there's a player who's played for a coach before that you're interested in. Players will joke that their exit interview is not about them. It's about the coach that the team is interested in. So there's a lot of research that goes into this. There's credit checks. There's, I don't even know if you'd call them reference checks, but you just reach out to anyone you think who might have a connection with this person. And, it's, you can't afford to make a mistake anymore. These hires are worth millions of dollars, and they affect millions of dollars. And you really don't want to leave any stone unturned.
Excellent email. Really excellent question. You know what part of it too is? I can remember talking to one person who interviewed for a head coaching position, and I asked, pretty much the identical question that Rashid was asking as well. Like, what was the nature of the conversation? And a lot of it revolved around, this is what's happening with our team. Here are some examples of things I don't like. How would you react if this player said this or this player did that? What would your reaction be? I found that pretty interesting.
Yes, that's very good.
Also, this one's interesting. Ryan in Norfolk, Virginia. Hey guys, Ryan from Norfolk, home of the ECHL's Norfolk Admirals here. I have a question regarding the NHL draft lottery. The Sharks just won the right to draft Macklin Celebrini. However, for some thankfully, but not this Hawks fan, the Blackhawks didn't win the first overall pick, instead winning the second overall pick. Is this still considered, quote, winning the lottery that would hinder the Blackhawks' ability to win another one over the next 5 years? Or would this not be the case given they were slated to pick second anyway? Also, fun fact, my dad formerly won 2 Riley Cups with John Brophy in Norfolk back in the 90s. That would have been when they were the Hampton Road Admirals. The stories that I heard in my childhood rivaled some of the best hockey lore history. Just always seems like a good idea to bring up Brophy on the podcast. You got that right, Ryan. Thanks, and always enjoy the pod. Did a little bit of snooping around. His dad is Dennis McEwen, who played on a couple of Hampton Road Admiral championship teams. And Dennis would have been someone that I would have watched play in the Ontario Hockey League because he played with the London Knights, was someone that I played baseball with, and I always admired as a hockey player. I think he was 1 year older than me, and that is Kelly Kane. So whenever London would come to town, I always go out of my way to go to Marlborough's games to watch the London Knights because I wanted to see Kelly Kane, who I thought was like A, the best hockey player, and B, the best baseball player that I had ever seen. Also, Elliott's on that Hampton Road Admirals team, Paul Krapelka, the Florida Panthers senior VP. That would have been the Hampton Road Admirals. Anyway, is that still considered, quote unquote, winning the lottery? Can the Hawks now not win the first overall pick in this 5-year segment?
A couple of things to say here. Kelly Kane. So,
yes.
So some people I know who went to Western and played hockey at Western played with Kelly Kane in the OHL, and apparently the stories about him were legendary. I was on a bus once. I was on a bus once traveling, I don't know, somewhere Western was playing, and Kelly Kane's name came up, and about 7 guys on the team, their eyes popped out and they were telling Kelly Kane stories. Like, this guy was a legend. an absolute legend in Ontario Hockey League circles. Paul Kropelka, good guy. I like Paul Kropelka. Black belt will kill you if you say the wrong thing to him.
I had no idea.
Yeah, his hands are lethal weapons. No, the answer is no, and this gets people confused. Jeff, winning the lottery is considered moving up, okay, or changing your position. As a matter of fact, if you read the NHL rules of the lottery, they are very clear. You can only win the lottery twice in any 5-year period. However, it does not affect a team's ability to retain its presumptive draft position in any draft lottery. Okay? So if Chicago's second and they win the lottery to finish second, that doesn't affect them. So any year that you get the spot that you're picking at, this year San Jose 1, Chicago 2, it does not count as winning the lottery. You're always allowed to pick where you finish. Always. It's when you move up that it's considered winning the lottery.
So James Higgins could potentially still become a Chicago Blackhawk.
Yes.
Next season. Excellent question. Thanks for the trip down memory lane with John Brophy. And congratulations to your dad for winning a pair of Riley Cups with John Brophy.
Awesome.
You were a
that's
lucky
fantastic.
kid who heard a lot of great hockey stories growing up here. One more really quickly here, Elliot, and this comes to us from Bernard, an Oilers fan in Acadie. So, hi guys. I really miss a pod and love listening to it on my mini commutes. It's the one thing I'll insist does not get changed to the pop channel my daughters listen to, and they understand. As an avid 45-year-old beer leaguer, now disillusioned, I will never make the NHL. I've known for a while now. I got wondering, which player holds the record for being the oldest to either sign a pro contract in the NHL or play his first game in the NHL? Thanks for the hockey data, info, trivia, and laughs. LA Oilers, La Coupe cette année. You know how that is, Elliot. It's one of my favorite people to talk about in hockey.
Well, wait. There's two questions here. Who's the oldest player to sign a contract? That would have to be Gordie Howe. He was 52 when he played, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so but I know you're talking about the oldest rookie. Yes.
I'm guessing it would be Gordie Howe. So
Yes,
absolutely.
But you're talking about the oldest rookie, and I would leave it to you on this one. Yes.
He played his entire career outside of 20 regular season and 5 playoff games in the minors. He was a legend in the Western League when it was a pro loop, playing for, amongst other teams, where he made his name, the Portland Buckaroos. This is the legendary tough guy, defenseman Connie Mad Dog Madigan, who, by the way, he played in the movie Slapshot at the end, in that final game when they introduce all like the biggest goons in hockey. Connie actually played a version of himself, Ross Mad Dog Madison. So he was called up and signed to the St. Louis Blues February 6th, 1973 at the young age of 38 years old. Had always been a minor league pro, terrorized various leagues. Most certainly the Western Loop, was one of the toughest to ever do it. Connie Mad Dog Madigan is the name we are after. And actually, Connie just passed away not too long ago, January 2nd. Yeah, right after New Year's this past year, passing away in Portland, Oregon at the age of 89 years old. One of the toughest players in the history of hockey. Thanks so much for the note on that one. And another trip down memory lane. Bernard, Oilers fan, living in Acadie. And that is the Montana's Thought Line once again. Montana's Barbecue and Bar, Canada's home for barbecue. We're back in a moment.
Jeff, Elliott, and Tom on 32 Thoughts. Try their ribs today. Oh, yeah.
Welcome back to 32 Thoughts, the podcast presented by the GMC Sierra Elevation. Elliotte wrapping up here, reminding everybody a pair of big games tonight. It is Monday. You will see the Carolina Hurricanes looking once again to stave off elimination at the hands of the New York Rangers as the venue shifts once again to Madison Square Garden. And Game 4 between the Dallas Stars and the Colorado Avalanche. The Stars lead this series 2-1. These were a pair of games that we watched on Saturday, bleeding in here into Monday. So let's rewind to Saturday then. Carolina 4, the New York Rangers 3. Brady Shea on a power play, we should say here. Brady Shea with the slap shot on the power play gives the Carolina Hurricanes their first win in the series and the Rangers' first loss of the playoffs. Along the way, we saw Kuznetsov score and do his celly and slam his stick into the glass in front of some Rangers fans. We saw Kuznetsov try the Michigan /lacrosse goal /high wraparound as well. This one was an intriguing game. The Alexis Lafreniere goal, which, we talk about, kind of goals that you can't have go in. Real nice play by Lafreniere, but still, what did you make of Saturday's Rangers-Carolina game?
Great game, very entertaining. The Rangers, I don't think anybody would have been surprised if the Rangers would have come back and won that game. Even when it was 2-0 and Carolina was on them early, the Rangers kept coming at them. Cooley scored to make it 2-1. The Hurricanes scored again to make it 3-1, but the Rangers kept coming. I was very curious about the start and goal. Anderson, to me, Anderson signed for one more year. If you don't give him that start, you're basically taking the number one job away from him. That's the balance I thought that Brind'Amour was kind of dealing with there. And ultimately, you have to start the person who you think gives you the best chance to win. But in my mind, if he had gone for Kochetkov instead of Anderson, it was a passing of the torch. Anderson stays in. They tried to bank another one off him earlier in the game, and they almost did it, but he held strong and they won. And it was interesting. Kevin pointed out in the post game that they had righty shots on the point earlier in the series and the playoffs on the power play, Burns and then D'Angelo, but they go lefty, Teravainen to Brady Shea, and it gives them a one-timer option that scores on that power play to win the game. I didn't want to see this series end in a sweep. Sorry, Rangers fans. I don't think sweeps are good, and I think the series is better than that. Carolina has a huge hole to climb out of. It's going to be an enormous challenge on Monday night in Madison Square Garden. I'm not saying they're incapable, but the Rangers look like a bit of a steamroller right now. I just think, for me, Jordan Staal has to give them some offense. They got a goal from Aho. That was very big. Power play got a goal. That was very big. They just need offense from a few more people. And you know who I think is going to do pretty well this offseason, Jeff, is going to be Nason. He has turned himself into a very, very useful player.
I'll tell you, everyone's looking for things that guys like Stefan Nason bring right now. Everybody can skate. Everybody can shoot. What else can you give me? Everyone's looking for a little more toughness. Everyone's looking for a little more bite. And that's why I completely agree with you. In this world now where the skills are so high and so many players are skilled, what differentiates you? The pendulum, Elliott, is swinging back to tougher hockey players. Mind you have to have the baseline of skill to begin with, but the pendulum is swinging, Elliott. The pendulum is swinging.
It's not only that, Jeff. It's not only the toughness, but they've used him in high-value places like the power play. And the goal he scores in Game 4, it's a line change. Jarvis comes off the ice, and he just makes a high IQ play. He charges on. He doesn't lollygag into the play, and he goes right to the net, and he scores. To me, that's a high IQ play that hockey coaches will notice. They'll say, you know what? He did everything right there. And that's why a guy like him is going to be valuable.
Okay. Also, we will see Game 4 between the Dallas Stars and the Colorado Avalanche on Saturday night. It was Alsagan and Stankoven for the Stars, each with a pair. Dallas 4, Colorado 1 in a game that I don't think I'm the only one that looks at this. Elliot, you're probably the same way, that looks at this and says, "What a great road game by the Dallas Stars." Your thoughts on Saturday?
When I saw the Stars get 3 penalties in the first period, I thought that game was going to be 8-0 after 20 minutes. They weathered the storm. They did a really nice job. Ottinger has consistently gotten better. Even though the series was tied 1-1, that was Dallas's best game of the series for me. They got a lead and they didn't fall apart. They held it this time. They didn't let Colorado charge back into it. Yes, it was 1-0 and Colorado tied it, but then they built the lead. And this time I thought that Dallas put a pretty nice blanket on them. In the first 2 games, obviously they lost the first one. They got the lead and then they were on the ropes and they held on for dear life. I never got that impression with this one. I agree with you. It was a perfect road game. Chris Tanev, if he wasn't already worth every dollar that they're paying him, has really showed that in this series. But I think just overall, the Stars as a team have put up a really nice defensive web on the Avalanche Saturday night. McKinnon created the one beautiful goal. But generally, I didn't think there was a lot of that there. Even though the Avalanche had a shot advantage, to me, the Stars seemed to be pretty in control. Rantanen has got to arrive. He has been quiet through the first 3 games of the series. Sometimes your teammates bail you out or you still lead the series anyway. It is that time now for Mikko Rantanen. He has to come and he has to start making an impact because, as you said, Jeff, the mullet-wearing Tyler Seguin and the rest of his scoring teammates have begun to arrive in this series. So Colorado needs its scoring depth as well. Now, one thing I would like to recognize from the last pod is that I had some pushback on my Jamie Benn take, and a significant amount of pushback to the point where I would like
the hit?
Well, not the hit. On Jamie Benn's reputation. I pointed out that Ben has only 1 major in 92 career playoff games for the crazy cross-check on Mark Stone. And I heard from the Red Wings fans who did not want to hear about Jamie Benn's good judgment because of the cross-check to Dylan Larkin. And I heard from a couple of Flames fans who pointed out that he was fined in the playoffs a couple of years ago, I think twice in that 7-game incredible series against Calgary. So their point was, okay, maybe he hits cleanly, but he's not exactly a Lady Byng trophy candidate. So allow me to say that those people, with the Larkin cross-check, totally fair comment. The fines against Calgary, totally fair comment. I generally feel, though, that when Ben delivers body checks, he tends to deliver them hard but clean. However, there was enough representation of people saying that I was generally insane that I thought it was fair comment to bring it up at this part of the pod. And you know what? Hold on, Jeff. One other thing I wanted to say too is we talked about recycled coaches last pod and the job Laviolette has done. Peter DeBoer, a lot of people would consider him a recycled coach, but he knows what he's doing.
And he's gotten close, and we'll see what happens later on tonight. One thing else we should mention as well, PWHL, exciting triple overtime game, Montreal and Boston on Saturday night. Taylor Wenskowski with the overtime winner, 11:44 into the third overtime. Boston wins over Montreal 2-1 is the final score. Boston grabs a 2-0 series lead in their best of 5. Aaron Frankel, netminder for Boston, incredible. 56 save performance. She was phenomenal. Game 3 goes Tuesday as Boston looks to close out against Montreal and punch their ticket to the final. Toronto can eliminate Minnesota later on tonight at the XL Energy Center. They lead that series 2-0.
Wait. We'll friend of the pod.
And these two.
Erin Ambrose.
Oh, she played like over 60 minutes.
I'm looking at it right now, 61-33. 61-33. There were five. I think there were five players. Laura Stacey played 52-30. Katie Tabin played 56-49. Marie-Philippe Poulin played 50-33. Kristen O'Neill played 52-44. I see Amanda Boulier played a pedestrian 45-44.
Slacker.
And Mariah Keppel played 44-22. Montreal had some wildly disparaged time on ices here. The most time on ice for Boston was Hillary Knight, the future Hall of Famer, who was at 49-23. So they had a bit more of an even spread. But 61-33, Aaron Ambrose.
I know.
Aaron,
Yep.
I think you've earned Sunday off.
I hope they had an IV in her in between periods. That was an incredible performance by Ambrose. And all eyes now on Tuesday, Game 3 between these two teams. And don't forget, later on tonight, you can watch Stanley Cup Playoff action starting at 6:30 with Hockey Central and your host, Ron McLean, 6:30 Eastern. That is 7 o'clock Eastern. It is Game 5 between the Rangers and the Hurricanes. Rangers lead the series 3-1. And then later, 9:30 on Sportsnet. You can watch, by the way, the Hurricanes and Rangers on CBC and on Sportsnet. Later on Sportsnet, you can watch the Dallas Stars and the Colorado Avalanche. Dallas leads that series 2-1. Game 4 gets underway just after 9:30 Eastern. For the whole crew here, thanks so much for listening again. We'll join you again on Wednesday. Enjoy the hockey.